It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelly, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force, on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time. And I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney. Wait, where are you?
Me?
No, the other person who climbed aboard this ship with me and was sitting right next to me last I looked.
Oh yeah. I'm done being quartered in the infirmary. I'm walking around the ship now, heading up to the bridge to see where we're headed.
You can just do that?
I can. You need to stay there. The medical staff want to evaluate you further.
Me?
Yeah, you did come back from the dead somehow. They're probably going to run a full battery of tests.
But you're the one who turned into a puddle of goo during our battle or whatever.
Liquefaction. That's what we call it.
Huh. Why don't you call it, like, jellyfaction?
You think the entirety of my race's language and customs and culture is just named after me?
You act like it is. But anyway, you're the reason this medical frigate was dispatched to us in the first place. You were going crazy, seeing things, you almost died. Shouldn't they be taking their time to evaluate you?
Nah, I just told them I was joking. They told me it was funny.
This entire army has the worst sense of humor.
Tell me about it. I'm looking at the navigational computer's course right now, and they're not taking us back to our original point of origin to get a new ship. They're taking us to some milk galaxy or something.
Milk galaxy? Is it ruled by cows?
Cows probably wouldn't make milk if they had a choice in the matter. So maybe it's ruled by people who dominate cows.
This is the most bizarre conversation I've had since, I don't know, probably our last episode?
Yeah, it's rather stream of consciousness, isn't it? As if we're just following random words from the ends of our previous sentences into the next ones.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. Can we just, talk about our discussion topic for the day?
Sure thing. You've got a solid chunk of time before your next round of tests, according to the computer. And today, we're going to be talking about the final 2 episodes. Right? The final 2 episodes?
4, by my count.
Oh. The final 4 episodes of the Red Ribbon Army saga, and it's episodes 65, 66, 67, and 68. They are Confront the Red Ribbon Army, A Real Bind, The End of Commander Red, and The Last Dragon Ball.
To kick off episode 65, we open on what is a nature scene, but actually turns out to be a golf course where Red is playing and Black is, I guess, applauding. They daydream over their success in collecting the Dragon Balls as they wait for Tao Pai Pai's return, when suddenly a call comes in. There's a message from Colonel Violet. She's found another Dragon Ball. Violet returns to HQ with her Dragon Ball, and we find out that the radar Blue stole was used to help her pinpoint the ball's location, and Red orders Black to ship it off to General Kappa to find the final Dragon Ball. Violet asks about her reward, and she's paid handsomely in gold, like a true mercenary. Back at Kame House, Bulma's work is completed. She's now built a small drone that can somehow track Goku and beam a video feed back to Roshi's TV. Bulma and Launch do the incredibly responsible thing and leave Roshi alone with a spy camera. Meanwhile, Bulma and Launch are working on the antenna outside, and it somewhat cuts the feed while Roshi's being a perv, and then when the feed is restored, he gets an eyeful of a dude pooping in the woods. Eventually, the drone finds Goku. The gang piece together that he's headed towards Red Ribbon HQ, and they are just convinced that there's no way he could possibly take them all on by himself, so they decide to help him out. But in order to do that, they have to call Yamcha for a ride. Bulma complains that there's no phone. Roshi points out, well, she's really smart. She could just build a phone. And then without any sort of telecommunications infrastructure whatsoever, Bulma just whips together a phone in like 30 seconds and calls Yamcha at her parents' house? I'm starting to think this swinger theory has got a little bit more to it than we originally thought. Gets her dad first, who's like terrible at reading the room and just kind of wants to tell Bulma a joke. But those rotten bananas don't sound very appealing, and she just yells at her dad to put Yamcha on the line. He, of course, quickly agrees to assist the rest of the group in locating Goku. The band gets back together, and they start to head off chasing after Goku. The episode ends with a musical number played over a recap of Goku's struggle against the Red Ribbon Army so far, as a sort of way to build up like hype for the climax, and also to, pad runtime a little bit. That brings us to episode 66, A Real Bind. We open on a high-tempo collection of scenes that show our heroes all preparing for what is bound to be the final confrontation with Red Ribbon. Inside Yamcha's ship, the mood's a bit more tense. Some of the gang don't feel like they'll be useful in the coming conflict, and they are still technically missing Krillin at this point, so they go on a slight side quest to find him. Back at Red Ribbon HQ, Commander Red's patiently waiting for Tao Pai Pai's return. He's ordered all stationary defenses to stand by, as he doesn't want them to accidentally shoot Mercenary Tao and upset him. However, Goku is the one that's actually closing in on Red, and Goku casually kills a man as he approaches Red Ribbon HQ. Just straight up blows up the helicopter thing that he's in. Oops, I guess. But the jig is up. Red Ribbon now know that it's Goku, not Tao Pai Pai. Since ordnance won't work, they send in a weird helicopter things. Pilots fare about as well as the first guy. They all just get blown up. They send in ground troops to just get their asses kicked. Everything they throw Goku just gets swept to the wayside. Back with the Kame crew, they've now reached the mountains just outside of Red Ribbon territory and fly face first into the defenses that were initially down when Goku flew by, so they also have a nice little missile chase scene of their own. Violet, kind of ahead of the curve, senses that maybe things aren't going to go so well for Red Ribbon. So she starts like raiding and looting and stashing as much money as she can on her body. And then she tries to escape and inadvertently ends up running into Yamcha's ship, essentially. Almost, I think, do they crash? I can't remember if they crash or if they miss at the last second.
They miss at the last second, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Goku's massacre continues unabated, now jumping into vehicles so he can punch them just hard enough to throw them off course and crash. In fact, almost as if to prove the slaughter is completely pointless, we see a sniper shoot Goku in the head only for the bullet to bounce off. So there's literally nothing these guys can do to him, so he's just murdering them for sport, essentially. Red retreats into the bunker where he has the Dragon Ball stored. Black recounts how badly Goku's beaten Red's ass, and Red sort of dwells on the fact that his whole army is lost to a child as this episode ends. Episode 67, which is technically the end of Commander Red at this point. So Goku's just been flexing on the Red Ribbon Army. Now he's doing it in slow motion. Red continues to have a breakdown in his bunker/vault thing. Violet continues cashing out her retirement plan, which puts Red in a bit of a pickle. Does he go down to the vault, or does he just stay in his bunker with his Dragon Balls and hopes to recoup his losses later? He decides to give up his wealth and hold on to the Dragon Balls. In a desperation move, he sends Black out to delay Goku while he takes the 2 Dragon Balls that he does still have on a tactical reposition, as I like to call it. As he leaves, Goku crashes through the window. Black declares his intention to fight. But behind the scenes, Red complains that Black isn't doing a good enough job. So he just decides to use the fight as a distraction and activate a trap that's supposed to squash that entire floor of the tower. As the trap is activated, Black is currently hanging out the window after Goku kicked him through it. So he actually manages to get around the trap, and when he climbs back into the building, he kind of has his view, I guess, of Red as this honorable leader and commander sort of shattered. Decides that maybe it's time for new management, and just ices Red. Just as Black begins to revel in his successful coup, Goku rejoins the celebration. I forgot what it was. He just lifted up or something like that to sneak out? I can't remember exactly how he gets out.
I can't either. A glance behind the curtain, due to a bunch of issues we've had in our personal lives, we've had to delay recording this episode. We were ready to record it like 3.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, not my best moment. I'll be honest. Anyways, him getting out of the trap's really not the important part. He gets out of the trap. Black realizes he's still alive, decides to up his firepower, jumps inside a mech suit, and then the episode ends with the giant robot essentially like holding Goku around the neck. Which brings us to episode 68, Yamcha's ship, where tensions continue to run high. Next, we get aftermath shots of Red Ribbon HQ. Return to the fight. Black vaporizes his disoriented Goku, but the victory celebration is a bit premature. Goku pulls off what I like to call a Larry. You know, Three Stooges, and tricks Black into like hitting himself. Like, stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Black decides to call him the big gun and make a mess, but really just ends up with his payload going rogue. Blast is a big one, though. Even the Kame crew, who are still miles away from HQ, managed to witness the finale. All worried that not even Goku could actually survive it. Fortunately, he actually just kicked the missile out of the way and easily survived it. Goku uses the chest burster technique. This is probably not going to be the last time he uses it. Brings an end to Black. While investigating the blast, the Kame crew notice Red Ribbon soldiers retreating. They press on, still unsure what has become of Goku. Meanwhile, Red Ribbon HQ is in tatters, the once proud fascist regime crumbling. Goku collects another 2 Dragon Balls and fires up the old radar to see where the last one is located, but it doesn't work. I guess it's a good thing there's a mechanic/engineer currently flying towards him. Speaking of, the crew are landing outside the base and finishing the trip on foot. They come up with a sort of plan to infiltrate the base, but Goku ends up flying right towards them on Nimbus anyways, which basically ends in a gag where everyone reprimands him for attacking a military base all alone, only for him to reveal the fight's already been won.
Yeah, these though are 4 pretty action-packed episodes, honestly.
It was actually a lot of fun watching them because the pacing was really good, despite some of the spots that are obvious padding. But overall, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, there's some stuff that we've got to talk about. We don't have a ton of notes this time, though. You know, this is the last 4 episodes of Saga, so we're really just hitting all the finish it out type of stuff, and so we're going to combine this, as we've done, I think, at least one other time, with our manga wrap-up as well, especially because before we get too deep into it, there's really not too many differences between the episodes we've been watching recently and the manga. So we'll do our manga wrap-up and all that stuff, but we do have some notes. There is a big discussion point, actually, if we wanted to talk for the rest of the entirety of this podcast and turn it into a race relations podcast.
I feel like that would go over really well.
But I want to save that discussion for another time and loop it into a discussion of another character, and I bet longtime Dragon Ball fans can know which character I'm referencing. So, breaking down just a couple points before we get to our comparisons of the manga. Violet, the character who is only in like 2 panels in the manga, is modeled after the character Savannah Nix from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. She's the alpha female leader of the group of youth that Max comes across in the second half of the film. It's been a minute since I've seen Beyond Thunderdome. That's that is the poorer half of the film, though, for sure. The first half, the Thunderdome and Bartertown stuff, is awesome. And then the second half, he like goes and rescues a gang of magical children or something who tell him about the end of the world. And there's some sort of weird prophecy where like he's gonna save them or something. It's not that good.
Well, you know, it's got its high points.
The first half of the movie's awesome with Master Blaster and Bartertown. That stuff's great. But it's I would probably put it third on my Mad Max hierarchy. I'd go Fury Road, Road Warrior, Thunderdome, and then the original. I might swap the original and Thunderdome. Those are the 2 lesser awesome ones.
Duly noted.
Anyways, there's a bunch of these unmanned drones flying around, which is potentially inspired by some Star Wars stuff. And, we talked about stormtroopers and missing shots and all that stuff. So, yep, we're still the anime staff at least is really picking up and putting down all that Star Wars material.
Big time.
The influence here on the design seemed fairly reminiscent, or at least maybe not the design, but just the behavior, the Imperial Scout droids that are featured in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then we have the ultimate defeat of the Red Ribbon Army here, at least for now, until they make multiple comebacks. We've even talked about the most recent comeback that they made in movie form.
I like to call them Dragon Ball's perennial losers.
Yeah, it's funny, they're like the Scarecrow in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Constantly taking L's.
Yeah, yeah. They're not like the big bad, but they're in like all of them.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
And they're taken out pretty easily. But anyways, since Toriyama just writes everything on the fly, this was intended to be their demise. This was intended, at the time it was written, to be the last time we ever saw the Red Ribbon Army. So, silver, purple, or Murasaki, white, blue, yellow, red, violet, the never seen brown and copper, purple's four brothers, which if you remember in like some supplemental material are named like aquamarine, blue, green, and pink or something like that. A pink blob monster, metallic, black. These colors are all defeated by a boy in orange. And intentional or not, Toriyama has mentioned before that the colors of Goku's gi are his favorite colors, specifically the orange. So is Toriyama saying his favorite color is better than all other colors? You be the judge.
That's a resounding yes. Speaking of Goku's gi, and because we're short of notes and discussion points here and what's a lot of action episodes with little story, let's talk about the gis in Dragon Ball. Also known as Dogi, or clothing of the way, the gi featured in Dragon Ball are more spiritual than just a martial arts uniform. It represents your dojo, your ethics, your school of training and thought, the others who belong to your dojo and share your same set of ethics and master, and you're representing their shugyo. This concept of a dogi is important to Dragon Ball because power and training and strength are only a piece of the puzzle. They're not just the physical prowess, but the spiritual control of ki as well. Japanese dogi are mostly all white with belts. Whether karate or judo, the only differences tend to be minor in terms of the fabric being used, and perhaps variations on the bands on the belts. That's about it. Chinese kung fu dogis, however, as well as Indian Buddhist Shaolin dogis, can vary wildly in color, size, style, whether they are tied to the body with belts or sashes or neither. Belts also only have significance of style and not of denoting any kind of rank. There are no ranked belts in Chinese kung fu. Goku's not a black belt because he is not of a Japanese school of study. Most often, Chinese dogi lack any insignia to denote the individual, rank, or school, but Toriyama felt there was something missing from the design that made it appear too plain otherwise and adds a kamon, or insignia, to the dogis for Goku and Krillin, which is a kame, or turtle, kanji, to denote that they are students of the Turtle Hermit.
Toriyama decides to use the yellow-orange for the color. It's his second favorite color behind Italian True Green, which I think would be like Tien Shinhan's color. But that's already used by regular Chinese Buddhist monks, and he didn't want to steal that for his main character, for his manga. However, the exact yellow-orange color used by Toriyama in the manga was not readily available at the time for the anime staff to use for cell shading, so they used red. This is something that has never felt right to Toriyama, even though even the orange we know from the Z era feels a little wrong to him, as his has more yellow in it, which you can see if you look up any color versions of the manga. It is a more burnt orange look to it, or more yellow orange. It's less orange than Goku's. that we think of from the anime. He chose this color because it has a connection to a plant in native China, which was then exported to Japan and then has ties to the Shaolin monks of the Tang Dynasty. I'm sure he didn't know all of that, but I think he knew, like, this is a Chinese flower and this is my Chinese manga, so I want that color in it for that reason.
That's about the level of effort I expect.
Yeah. And also, it is one of his favorite colors. The dogis represent that Krillin and Goku are trusted by Roshi to represent him and his school. And Goku then almost always wears his dogi because, except when, like, Chi-Chi makes him go shopping or something, he's always in the mindset of his Shugyo, his training, and following his Tao. The gi becomes symbolic even to the characters in the show who concern themselves with their clothing, and using the proper dogis to reach their full potential, true power levels. So, just as a for instance, like Krillin sometimes tries to be, I don't know about stylish, but wear more normal clothes. He then puts on his dogi when he's like in training mode. Even if he's not going to a battle, you know, you'll see Goku say, hey, come on, we got to go get ready for a battle. And they might be training for months in the Room of Spirit and Time or whatever, but he's putting that on to get himself back into his mindset. We've sat on this little bit of trivia about the dogis for a while, stowing it away for a rainy day, and wouldn't you know it, here we sit with a bunch of episodes that didn't have a ton of notes otherwise, so it worked out for us.
Yeah, not bad. There's a bunch of filler in these episodes without a ton to note on it, except to, as we'll do in a minute, compare it to the manga and point out what's expanded or different. But there are some things to note. Commander Red in the English dub has a Scottish accent, at least some of the time. The dub is inconsistent with regards to this, which is a choice, apparently. Red is shown golfing during an episode. This begs the question, did the dubbing staff know he'd be shown golfing and see this shock of red hair and diminutive stature and think so many Scottish stereotypes? Or was it some sort of bizarre coincidence? These episodes aired in June of 1987. In the 70s and 80s, there was a bit of a swath of killer alligator movies made in Italy and America, including Killer Crocodile, Alligator, Crocodile Fangs, Great Crocodile, Eaten Alive, and Dark Age. Had these movies just recently made their way across the ocean to Japan and made a bit of a flare-up in why during a filler sequence an alligator is chasing members of the Red Ribbon Army? Or was it a coincidence? We looked into whether the urban legend of the sewer gator was a thing at the time. Yeah, we're kind of scraping a bit, we know. But from what we saw, it looks like it was more popular back in the 20s and 30s, with a bit of a resurgence in the late 60s to early 70s. The alligator character Leatherhead from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics and show was first created in 1987, but he didn't first appear in the series until 1988. In this case, it seems like they wanted a giant sea animal of some kind, and had already used a shark when Goku and Krillin were training under Roshi, so they decided to use an alligator because, why not?
I've seen a bunch of those alligator movies, by the way.
Have you? Because I've not heard of any of them.
Well, I've seen probably like 2 or 3 of them. But Alligator, the one that's just called Alligator from like, oh boy, I want to say it's like a mid-80s movie. It's like about an alligator becoming mutated and living in New York City's sewers. It's good.
Oh,
if that sounds like your bag.
I mean, I might check it out. I'm always
if you want a more recent good killer alligator movie, there was Crawl.
Oh yes, that was good.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Well, it wasn't from the 70s and 80s, so I guess that's why it didn't make the list. Anyway.
Yeah.
For some more Indiana Jones influence, of which we've had a bunch throughout the Red Ribbon Army saga, most notably in the General Blue portions of the story, but look no further than a filler sequence with Violet, where she's being chased by a bunch of tribesmen while trying to get into her prop plane, and they're shooting arrows at her. It's very evocative of the sequence near the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones has to escape from his rivals' paid tribesmen mercenaries and his seaplane that, if I remember right, had snakes in it or something? Or a snake in it?
Yeah, it was
Am I
like
thinking
his
of something
pet.
else?
Was it his pet snake?
I think it was it was like the pilot's pet snake or something like that. But anyways, yeah, this whole scene with Violet running to her own plane is like almost shot for shot remake.
Yeah, I like that when the filler stuff in the anime seems to be picking up on the like references that the manga was doing.
Yeah.
We had that happen like during the one episode where Pilaf's flying fortress is basically like the Death Star.
Yeah.
and General, was it Colonel Silver, said like boring conversation anyways. Like, I like when that happens.
Yeah.
We learn Red's ultimate goal finally, and his true motivations for collecting the Dragon Balls, and it's that he has a Napoleon complex, and it's almost a little bit sad, maybe. The whole reason this entire evil army exists with desires to conquer the world is because a short guy was bullied in school. The manga takes it a step further, as does the Japanese version of the anime, and they say that it's very specifically that no women want to be with Red because of his height. But in general, Red believes that if he can become powerful, that's okay. Ultimately, being tall will get him respect and admiration. When we first started this arc, way back when we first met the Red Ribbon Army and we were doing Muscle Tower and all that, we pondered whether there was any kind of political statement being made. And ultimately, I think that whether or not there's meant to be one, there is one. And we talked about that. How by the very nature of art reflecting some portion of the artist and the artist's feelings, there's some sort of statement being made. But Toriyama here and now is trying to sort of explicitly state that the Red Ribbon Army is not political and they're personal. And it's about as personal as you can get.
I would just put out there, it might not be political, but it does kind of confirm to me that incels lead to fascism. So just throwing that out there.
So, interestingly, there's some disputes about whether Napoleon himself was a short man. Some historians say he was actually 5'7", which would be about average or above average for men of that time. Others argue that there's these weird inconsistencies in his measurements that would actually put him closer to 5'2". He was often seen around his imperial guards, who were explicitly tall men and would make even average height people seem small, so that could have contributed to the perception that he was short. And additionally, there was a massive smear campaign run by the British during the early 1800s to diminish Napoleon and portray him as a short, ill-tempered man. So this is more propaganda bleeding into reality, which we've talked about at least one other time. I don't remember when.
I don't know where we could have ever possibly run into propaganda ever in this military outfit.
Well, we've talked at least once about, like, I can't remember.
Sterling research on our own episodes here on this podcast.
Well, yes. Some research conducted over the years has concluded that the Napoleon complex itself may or may not actually be a myth. That, you may or may not have a Napoleon complex by virtue of being short. However, short people have no greater propensity toward being ill-tempered, violent people than tall people, which is great news for me because I am not a tall man.
Black betraying Red is a pretty major twist, a subversion, if you will, even of the classic Bond formula, which we know Red has played into. When we first meet him, he was only seen in brief glimpses, similar to Blofeld from the Bond franchise, but he never has his final confrontation with the hero. It's also subverting a typical kung fu trope where the heavy or number two is fiercely loyal to his commander to the bitter end, and even softens the hero up, wearing him down and ratcheting up the tension for viewers for when the hero has his final confrontation with the main villain. Will the hero be able to come out on top after going through everything he did to reach that villain? Or will the injuries sustained prove too much and the villain triumphs? Toriyama's answer? The villain just got shot in the head. Don't worry about their final confrontation. He's dead.
Yeah, it is like it's become a trope in a lot of things, and it kind of wasn't as much at the time of like the number two betraying the villain at the end.
I always think it's interesting to go back and watch these like older shows and stuff because, like you said, this was novel back then. Like for somebody looking back at this from 2022, a lot of these plot twists and stuff seem sort of obvious, but at the time, this was like a first. This was something that hadn't happened very often before.
Yeah, I feel like especially for its target audience is the other thing of younger people. The only other time they would really have seen this and clocked it would be Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And that is definitely built up a lot more as something that might potentially happen throughout the course of that movie. Right? That whole movie is kind of about Darth Vader ultimately turning on the Emperor. Spoilies.
Oh no.
For anyone who's listening to a Dragon Ball podcast and has never seen Return of the Jedi.
Disregard everything you just heard.
This betrayal seems to come a little bit more out of nowhere. I mean, you get the little hints of it, obviously, when he's like, wait, you just want to be taller? Like, what? But no, it does just kind of come out of nowhere. Not nowhere, but...
I also think it's fun to go back to the movie that we just watched, that Bulma was using the Dragon Balls for the similar selfish reason to make herself like look younger.
Yeah. Yeah, and Frieza wanted to use them to make himself 5 centimeters taller. So yeah, going through the manga again on this, because this is really our wrap up on all the Red Ribbon stuff. Not a ton of differences. I had a few. I had one big one, and it was so big to me that I went and double checked, and no, this is not something that is in the manga. You can confirm. Maybe I had a stroke, a very long one. Maybe my manga has pages ripped out of it that I'm not seeing.
Okay.
Maybe I have horrible reading comprehension skills, but
I think I already know where you're going.
The part where Tao Pai Pai runs up Corrin's tower?
No, that was in the manga, I think. Or is it not? Have I lost my mind? I thought you were going to go with the lack of a trap when Goku confronts Black.
Oh yeah, that was not in there. Yes. No,
that's where I thought you were going with it.
I don't have Mercenary Tao going up Corrin Tower. I was blown away. I was blown away. Blown. Because I thought for sure it was in there. But it's chapter 90 when Goku finally comes down from Corrin Tower and rescues Upa. Is his name Upa?
Yeah, Upa.
Then it's 91 when he starts fighting Tao.
Tao gets the sword.
And he breaks the sword. He deflects. Does he deflect the Dodonpa at that point? Maybe. It might be in 92 that he deflects the Dodonpa. But he's beating up Mercenary. Yeah. He's beating up Mercenary Tao Pai Pai in 92. He goes, "Oh, you're a bad kid or whatever. How'd you finally start to beat me?" And he's like, I ran up the tower or something. And then he kicks the grenade into him.
Yeah. How did we both miss that?
No, I was stunned. I really thought that was part of the manga.
I guess that was purely just for padding for the anime. Wow, that's interesting. I completely missed that.
Because I thought the whole thing with the I had been working under the impression here that like the Black Nimbus was a thing that was seen briefly in the manga one time.
Maybe I had a few more drinks than I thought I did when I was reading this portion.
That was a big one for me where I went back and like reread it. I was like, did I stroke out?
No, apparently you did not.
I think I read this when I was kind of getting sick. I was like, oh, did I pass out because I was sick? Yeah, just a few other things I had was, I like to note whenever I come across it, like we talked in our Korin episode about how it's not Korin, it's Karin, and it's named after a sweet treat in Japan. In the manga, or at least in my translation, it's translated as Karin.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at as well.
Yeah. I always like to point that out, even though I say Korin because I'm a filthy dub Philistine.
It's okay, we forgive you.
I thought, to me, Upa or Bora, the dad, comes across quite a bit more badass in the manga, actually.
Yeah, and I think that probably has to do with like things that they're allowed to show in the manga, but not in an anime.
Possibly, yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, I believe his tussle with Red Ribbon thugs was a bit more violent in the manga than it was in the anime.
Yeah, and so he comes across... It makes the impact of him then getting dispatched by Tao easily kind of...
He's a jobber.
A little higher, because he at least... Well, he's like better than a jobber. He's like a mid-carder or something, Like he's like the
fair.
Intercontinental champion facing off against the heavyweight champion. This is not going to end well for him.
And it did not.
I think there's to me it felt like there was a lot more build up to Tao Pai Pai and more going on with Yello and Bora and Upa. I noticed in my translation again, Upa specifically calls Karin Tower a totem pole.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the one I'm looking at, it's called a tower.
Yeah, in my translation, he specifically said, like, this sacred totem pole. And I thought that was interesting.
That actually makes more sense, honestly. Because a tower implies, like, a building structure with, like, an interior.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas totem pole would just be a decorative pole.
Yeah. But, here again, in the... Well, I guess he says there's a legend of there being someone on top of it, right?
Yeah.
But he does not, in the manga, think that anyone has ever climbed the tower. And in the anime, they say only one man has, which you're supposed to take as, like, Roshi,
Yeah.
They do not think anyone ever has in the manga. Little difference there. Oh. Karin has a great joke in the manga. I don't know if you caught it. Again, it might be the differences in our translations. We talked in our Korin episode, and I don't remember the specifics of the language joke, but how he was revealed to be like a hermit cat, and the whole joke being because cats in Japanese like mythology are meant to also disappear into the mountains to work on their mysterious arts or whatever, We talked about that and how there's like a play on words with hermit and how it can be sort of translated as cat in the.
Okay, I got you.
We talked about that in the kanji or whatever. It's like a slightly different kanji, but it's pronounced the same or something like that. Well, when Goku gets to the top and he's like, "You're the hermit master?" And Korin goes, "I guess you could call me a hermit meowster."
So I'm looking at at my version of the manga, and he says, technically I'm the Seneko-sama, with Neko for cat replacing the nin for human in Senin, or like wise person.
Yeah.
So I think it's the joke works better in English personally, but I'm an English speaker, so
Right.
Probably biased.
Right. Yeah, it was that was it. It was the Senin versus Sen Ninka. Yeah, we talked about that. I remember. Go back and listen a few episodes ago to when we did Master Karn, and you can hear more about that. But yes, I thought Hermit Meowster was
That is pretty good. Not gonna
A
lie.
plus.
That gets A plus to the translators for me. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is like a dad level joke. I had a typo right in the start of my chapter 92.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Goku says, hang on, I want to make sure I quote it exactly right. It's Tao Pai Pai staring down Goku, and he says, Tao Pai Pai says, you dare to say that you will defeat the world's greatest assassin barehanded? Goku says, yup. If just wouldn't feel right to do it any other way.
Nice.
Not it just wouldn't feel right. That's the little typo I had right at the beginning of my chapter 92.
Are you proud of finding that?
No. This whole volume is garbage. I want my 1999 back. Viz Media has right. This is what you're supposed to do as an entitled fan.
Yeah. Literally unreadable.
They have robbed me of the experience. I am offended. I don't know what other outrage can I pretend to have.
Triggered? I think you're triggered, maybe.
Oh, I can't be triggered because then I'm a snowflake, and I'm not any snowflake. There's a weird thing in so you talked about in these episodes where Roshi says like build a drone or whatever, and like Bulma, he does something lewd and Bulma gets pissed at him. In the anime, he says, "Oh, good job building that drone. How about a kiss as a reward?" And she like swats him. In the manga, again, maybe yours is translated differently. He says, "Good job building that drone. Too bad you're built like a boy."
What? Okay. What chapter is this?
Yeah, let me see if I can find what chapter it was. It's got to be after 92, so it's probably what a weird. That was a really weird one to me though, because I was like, he has like gotten nosebleeds over her boobs many, many times. It's in chapter 93.
Yeah, and chapter 93 at the very bottom of page 51 is what I'm looking at. And Roshi says, "You really are amazing, though, being able to make something like this with just some parts lying around here. I guess your big boobs aren't the only good thing about you."
Huh.
So it's like the opposite.
That's a much better translation than mine. Mine says, "You really are amazing, though. Finding random materials, pulling them together into something this brilliant. Too bad you're built like a boy."
Which doesn't make any sense.
Right. So, hang on. So, whoever translated this one said, "There's no way," he says, "I guess you got really big boobs," because there's no way a lady could be offended by such a comment.
The 80s were a different time.
Right. Is that what happened?
I hope not. But somehow I feel like that is what happened.
Like, no way he said you. That must be some kind of typo in the original manga. No way he said big boobs. That's a compliment.
Nobody would ever think big boobs is a negative, ever. Why would they do that?
And then the last thing is there's a line right around here too. Oh, now I can't recall exactly where it is. I wish I had written it down a little better. It was my last little note. But in the manga, Roshi like gives some insinuation at some point that Bulma is an idiot. In the anime, he says like, "Oh, she just needed like a little push in the right direction or something." And it's like, that seems
a little out of character.
That seems more... Oh, it's when the turtle says you should be able to build a phone. And she says, oh, that's right, I can build a phone. Roshi, in my translation, this is just a few pages after the boob line.
Yep.
He says, there's a thin line between idiocy and genius.
Yeah, in my version, he says, I'm not sure whether to call her a genius or an idiot.
Okay. In the anime, he says, oh, I guess she just needed a little bit of push to get her juices flowing, or see, something like that.
Yeah.
He says something that feels more, honestly, more in line with the reality of the situation, you know, like that she just needed a little bit of a kick in the pants or something to kind of...
But also...
Like you said, be able to make a phone with no telecommunications equipment around.
Look, she's a woman. She's got to understand her place is below all men, regardless of how skilled and competent she is. Pervy
and then the other
literally sits around doing nothing all day, and yet we're supposed to believe his assessment. Okay.
And then the last big difference is of a lot of the stuff between red and black just plays out very differently because there's no trap in the floor thing.
Yeah, which I can only assume is another, I don't know, play for time or something in the anime, because I'm not really sure what other purpose it would serve.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's... I mean, again, it's another thing that's like borderline Indiana Jones, but it's not a booby trap, right? It's a triggered trap. Like if the walls were slowly closing in and everything, that's like, oh, that's Temple of Doom. But it's a different...
Like, it would be something if it, like, just spitballing here, but like Black is much taller and has much longer reach than Goku. If there was maybe some sort of trap that would play into that to give Black an advantage in the fight, that might have been interesting. But yeah, just like crushing the floor with no regard as to whether your second in command is in there or not, just is kind of anticlimactic, honestly.
You know what could have been fun? But again, this is completely different from the manga. This would be like a massive change. You go with the floor crushing thing, right? The floor crush stops short of where, like, maybe if spikes come out of the ceiling and it stops short of where it would puncture Red.
Okay.
So that Red doesn't get punctured because he's short and he assumes that anyone else in the room would be tall.
And then Goku survives by virtue of the fact that he is also short.
Yes.
That would be pretty good, actually.
And then you could have Red hop in the robot and fight Goku. It's not that much different from Black doing it, right? I think Toyotaru writes Dragon Ball Super. Anytime you want to hand me some money and have me start coming up with gags for you, I'm here.
Now we just have to wait and see if it actually happens. And then we have proof that we thought of it first, and then we can make a quick buck off of them.
Like if there's a episode where, because Frieza's shorter than Goku, he like has a blade come out of the wall or something, but right at that moment Goku happens to be bending down to pick up a penny. If that happens in Dragon Ball now, I'm suing.
You heard it here first, folks.
And then we're gonna be countersued for
this could just be our retirement plan, because of assuming Dragon Ball goes on long enough, they'll eventually have to use an idea that we come up with even purely by accident, and then that's when we cash in.
That's when we make money. So we're all done with the Red Ribbon Army. When we started this way back when, I very specifically said this was not my favorite stuff.
I can understand
I would say, I don't know if that has changed, but I would say overall I was more positive about it now than before. Though, I will say I still think the General Blue stuff is quite possibly my least favorite stuff in all of Dragon Ball still.
I would say I like it about the same as much as I did previously. It was also not my favorite part of Dragon Ball, but it was also not my least favorite part. However, looking back on it now, and after having watched it with a more critical eye, I really feel like that subversion at the end with Red and Black kind of undermines the entire plot for this arc. Because the entire arc we've been building up towards Red for quite a while, only for them technically for Goku and Red to never even meet.
Right.
And it's just kind of undermines it a bit. Like, I understand what they're going for, and the betrayal is in itself, I think it's a pretty good storytelling tool. But I feel like because Toriyama spent so much time with this Red Ribbon stuff, that doing a subversion like that at the very end kind of just undermines all of the plot up to that point.
Yeah, I could see that.
But even that's not, I mean, it's not like it makes it terrible or anything like that.
No, it's just, I would still say, yeah, it's not like my favorite stuff in Dragon Ball, you know, like you get removed from this or whatever and you get into a somewhat casual conversation, you know, with someone who's like, oh, I like Dragon Ball, you know, and you're like, oh, cool. You would probably not really start talking about this.
Yeah, no. And especially considering how Red Ribbon turns out in going forward from here,
Mm-hmm.
where they become even more of a joke.
But it does have one of the best, like, the Red Ribbon Army as a whole has one of the best things in Dragon Ball, which is throwing the pillar.
Yeah. Oh my God. That is up there with some of the greatest moments ever in all of Dragon Ball. It's
incredible.
You can't top it with how ridiculously over the top it is.
I love it.
Because throwing the pillar implies not only is he strong enough to throw the pillar, but he's so strong that throwing the pillar is actually a less efficient way for him to get where he wants to go. Like, look at this amazing thing I can do, and by the way, this is a terrible use of my power.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. We like to do our 7 stars rating, or seven Dragon Balls rating. The Commander Red stuff, I would give... Okay, here's how I would do this. I would give the Commander Red portion specifically, and that's just from the end of when Arale-chan punches Blue into the sky to the end of this. I'd give that a 4 out of 7 Dragon Balls. But I give the whole of the Red Ribbon Army 3 out of 7. Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense.
I get what you're saying. You're saying the finale for you is a little bit stronger than the storyline overall.
Yeah.
Okay, I get behind that.
The 7-star system is hard.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think I'm gonna bother splitting it up into parts or anything like that. I think I'm just gonna look at Red Ribbon arc as a whole. I'm gonna give it overall. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. Better than average.
I'm fine with that too. That's fair. So then that takes us to the end of the Red Ribbon Army. They are kaput for now, unless you have anything else you would like to say about the Red Ribbon Army at this time.
They're a joke, but I love them. Please, Toriyama, do more of them.
Especially, okay, can we get, was it Conrad?
The guy with the pompadour?
Yeah, what was his name?
I think it was
Carmine.
Carmine. Yes, that's it. That's the one.
More Carmine, please.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially how, like, any vehicle he gets into has to be modified to accept his hair. That's just perfection.
With the hat, the hair dome?
Yes.
Yeah. More Carmine.
I love that, like, not only is that the first thing that the audience sees about the car, but that also plays into Oh God, what's the doctor's name? I forgot.
Dr. Hedo.
Yes, plays into Dr. Hedo, like explaining how he knew that he was being followed because of the car.
Yes, more Red Ribbon Army for the lulls, and lots more Carmine.
I would accept a Carmine-based spinoff.
Also for the lulls. I would 100% watch an OVA. You know, those are they're usually like 30 to 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That was like a Carmine gag episode.
Sign me up.
And that you presented it in a way that was like one of his presentations.
I was about to say, is this a Carmine presentation?
Yes.
Because inject that straight into my veins. Yes, please.
Now comes the fun part. Well, for me at least.
What?
Have you ever heard of a dachioplasdectomy?
No. What is it?
It's a medical procedure. The entire ship is going to watch the doctors perform it.
Well, that's not encouraging.
Well, why not?
You never want to have something done to you that's so wild it commands an audience.
I'm good with it.
Because it's not being done to you.
Exactly. In fact, I'm not even going to watch.
Why not? I'm scared, and as tremendously depressing as it is, you're basically my only friend.
Ooh, sounds like they're about to get started.
Oh God! What is that? Get away from me with that!
Yeah, that sounds about right. What the? Listeners, a dachioplasdectomy is one of the most painful procedures our medical scientists have. But it shouldn't short out audio feeds, fry all internal cameras on board the ship, and cause a master alarm. I'm gonna have to check this out. I'll take my leave of you here, listeners. Will Bekinney be okay? Will I discover the source of this technological malfunction? Will we reach the Milk Galaxy unscathed? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.